Welcome back to Networking Unleashed Building Profitable Connections, the podcast where we uncover the strategies, stories, and systems that turn relationships into real results. I'm your host, Michael Forman, and today's episode is going to challenge the way you think about career growth, collaboration, and connection. My guest is an expert in helping professionals get promoted in just 90 days, rethink how we generate ideas by explaining why brainstorming doesn't work, and master the art of dealing with distractions and interruptions without losing momentum or meaningful relationships all the way along the way. This conversation goes beyond surface level networking. We're talking about building influence, showing up with intention, and creating the kind of connections that don't just open doors, they help you walk through them prepared. So, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading a team, building your brand with building your brand, this episode is packed with insights you can use right now. I'd like to bring into the podcast Greg Weinger, and he has really an extensive background. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll get on underway. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Michael. It's really great to be here. I happy to tell you a little bit about my background. I come from a really high achiever family, really. My father was a surgeon, so there's really no question that you're going to go after it in life. And so I came out of the barrel of the shotgun or the cannon, whatever metaphor you want to use. And so I was high school valedictorian. I was on the swim team, All-American swimming. I would go to Stanford. And then I started to hit some headwinds there and trying to find my way a little bit. I studied two things. I studied English and I studied computer science. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get a job as a programmer. And I go out into the career world. And I tapped the brakes a little. I saw a lot of peers going after these super highest level positions, and I wanted to enjoy life a little bit more. So I've always sought work-life balance, however that looks for me. But I worked in programming for a while, but I didn't love decisions that were being made. I was surrounded by brilliant engineers and they're doing amazing things. And it's like the decision, why are we building these things? I wanted to have some influence over that. And so I'm going to cut to the chase. I got into management. I achieved different levels, manager, director, VP, and I was eventually on an executive team. And this is where I am now. I've since worked at three companies. We've grown them to like between 10 to 70 million in revenue. We've done it multiple times. But the first one, this is a luck. I was on an IPO company. So I've seen a lot of success. I've learned a ton out of that. But what that neat story doesn't tell you is the struggle that I had because as it turns out, I have the words for it now. My whole life, I've been an introvert. And so when I was so achievement oriented, I was like, I'm ready to be a leader now. And I wasn't presenting as a leader. And this was a lot of things that we think of as leadership didn't come naturally to me. Standing up, confrontation. I went through a lot of anxiety dealing with confrontation at different stages in my career. And so I reached each level, it ratchets up the pressure. And so at each level, I had to learn new techniques and new skills along the way, including at the executive level. That was another level, and I had to do even more work on myself just to give myself the tools to be able to deal with the levels of pressure at that level. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that's really good. And you hit on so many points that I speak about regarding the networking communication, but the introverts versus the extroverts and the problems that go along with each of them. And I don't want to get into what I do. The way here that you're speaking, you've conquered most of it as you got that extra level, you conquered what you had to do to excel in your position, and you did it so on and so forth. That's all wonderful. That's great because, and at the end I'm going to ask you what you would recommend for somebody else, but that's just really good. Let me just go into some of the questions that I have for you. You teach how to get promoted in 90 days. What role does strategic networking play in making that happen fast?
It's a great question. Maybe I just start with the initial step. And it can sound like a bit of a cliche, but it's really the essential piece. Like if you don't do this, none of the rest really works the way you want, especially you're trying to achieve something in 90 days. And that's really to promote yourself. And what that means, it's really a shift in mindset. You have to act as though you already have the role that you want. And so that involves knowing what that role is and knowing you maybe you see examples of it, maybe you don't. And so that's one way that the networking piece comes in. But it's really more about how you show up. Is one part of it, and the other part is the level of commitment. When you get to a place where that next promotion is what you must have, and there's just no question, it's going to happen. It's going to unfold for you, whether it's in your current role or not. It just becomes part of your destiny and your future. And that's a decision everyone can make. And I think a lot of people don't realize, and until you've had that experience, you don't realize that this is how it actually works. So that's the first step. The next step is the strategic networking because you need to figure out a lot of things. You need to figure out how am I being perceived? You really need feedback is one thing. And so you want to seek out mentors, other people in your role, people who surround your role. Roles surrounding your role have lots of great information about the position that you want to be in. And so you've got to talk to people. And so if you haven't established a network of people, it's never too late to start. Now is the perfect time to start. I heard this the other day. What was the best time to plant a tree or something that was 20 years ago? What's the second best time to plant a tree? It's now. So you can always start. And I think the easiest way is people who you see every day, people in your company, someone you can approach very easily. And then after that, LinkedIn is God's gift to networking. And it's really connect with people you're already connected with, but it's also easy to get introductions and that sort of thing. And it's really, people are always open to someone coming to you and saying, hey, I could use some advice. It's really not, I guess there are probably exceptions to that, but most everybody loves to do that. They love, you're really valuing and honoring their knowledge and
Knowledge.
their experience by doing that, and people like to help.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I always had a very good feeling of what I did, but I knew intimately what my boss did, and I knew a little bit about what his boss did because I was always looking one to two places above me, but that's me. I'm one of those people. I'm okay, I'm happy now, but I want that position. And I go on. But what you said, but building the network, and it's never too late to start. And you were so right when you said LinkedIn, because you have your basic network that you deal with. You connect with them on LinkedIn. And I just gave this to one of my coaching students. I said, you know what? You have to give them a little piece of something. You're a problem solver. Okay. So you have to go after, let's say, a person, but give them something of value. If you're constantly giving them something of value, you'll be seeing that much more. Enough about me. Let's go on to the next question. Can you share a story where a single relationship or connection helped someone accelerate their career in under 90 days?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll give you an example of, this is my own example of, and this is well under 90 days. So there's a book called Phil Terry it's about the job search councils. It's basically about not networking alone. So like when you go out on your job search, it can be a really lonely experience, and if you don't have someone there to support you. And so there's a whole framework to it. You might be familiar with it, but you find other people who are in that situation, and then you start interviewing people and you start asking What can they, you just start asking about the role. It's, you're learning more about that. And so you're not just rushing into a job search. But what happened with me is I read this book, and one of the suggestions in it was, can, you know, can you find the role that you want in your current job? And so I said, that seems a lot easier. Why don't I try that? Just try that first, and then I can go through all this whole process and form a council and start really extensive networking. And I went to my boss and I said, I need to get to this next level. I talked about life circumstances. I need to get to a different level of money, but it's also the right time for me in my career. I need to take on more responsibility. And he said, at the time he was reporting to the CEO, and he said, well, let me talk to him. And we had a long conversation. They met at the bar that evening, and then later that night they came to me. It's like, we're going to make it work out. So basically, I asked for the role I wanted, and there was a strong element of timing in that. But that's how cl close you might be. You might think I might have to leave my job. It might be 6 to 12 months, but it could be that close. Chances are that's a more rare circumstance, but 3 months is completely realistic, and I've seen that multiple times.
Yes, it's very realistic. And again, going up the corporate ladder, as you said, timing has to be right. For somebody within the same job or same company, timing has to be right. If it's not, you can do that whole search thing. But you take it like what you said. You have to take the shot, explain
Yeah.
to your boss or something that this is what you need, and he made it work for you. So you had the relationship with your boss, you had the relationship with the company, and obviously you were good at what you did. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have given you the time of day. So all of that has to come into play. Okay, so you say brainstorming doesn't work. What's a more effective way to tap into the power of people when generating ideas?
Yeah, and to answer that, we have to think about why it doesn't work. And there's a fascinating history on that. There's a man named Alex Osborne. And so if you've ever watched the Mad Men series, think of Don Draper. That was him, his Master of the Universe, Madison Avenue King in the 1940s, 30s, 40s. And he had developed these techniques in his agencies where he's credited with inventing brainstorming, where imagine like the madman office and smoke is swirling, maybe they're having scotches and they're just throwing out ideas. And the ideas is like for the wilder and the more spontaneous this whole exercise is, the more creative and fruitful the ideas become. And it's an extremely attractive idea. And it has just gotten so embedded in our culture, minus the smoke and scotch anymore. But I can't tell you how many brainstorming sessions I've been in my entire life. And the only catch at it is that they've been studying this in business schools for 40 years. And study after study proved that it doesn't work. It's suboptimal. And one of the reasons is because roughly half of the people in any given room are introverts. And introverts don't do their best thinking out loud. They're actually doing their best thinking alone, given the time and the exercise, and that's where a lot of the creativity comes up. And so half of your people are freezing up and getting overstimulated and crowded out from thinking their best in that situation. And then, it's just suboptimal in that way. So how do you solve that? What has been shown to work really well is to give people some homework assignments so they can go off in and come up with ideas on their own terms, on their best, and then they come in and present them. And so the group activity is triage, evaluation, augmentation. There is an element of group discussion, but it's starting with much more fertile initial sets of ideas. And that actually works for extroverts too. That's why really is an optimal solution.
That sounds like a really good idea. And it sounds like it's a very good idea of something that if all you've done is brainstorming, when you introduce this idea, it's actually a little more clear for what you can accomplish and your your opinions or whatever else that you're giving to the mass, the whoever's in the brainstorming session You're giving a lot more to it than just the ideas that are just coming off your head. There's a lot more thinking involved. So that's very good. Okay. So what's the difference between being seen as a go-to person versus just being liked in the workplace? And how does networking influence that perception?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I think a key part, and I talk about introverts and introversion, but I think this has got to go for everybody. A key part of networking is establishing personal contact. And many people are good at that. Introverts are great one-on-one. And if you're an introvert, you can do this as well as anyone. Is just grab time with people who are who are peers in other roles and functions around the organization and establish there has to be, I think, to make this really effective, you want to establish a personal level of connection as well as a professional. And what I've always done is I think about who are really critical people to my role in the organization to get things done. And for me, I've always worked in product management, and so I need to know people in marketing. I need to know key people in sales. I don't know, need to know everyone important in engineering, but really, and in finance as well. It's really all the way across the company. But I think you can do this for whatever role you're in. Maybe you don't work with everyone in the company, but if you understand who those key people are, then you can establish that relationship. And maybe you only need to talk to them once every 3 months, or some people you want to talk to monthly. But when you sit down and talk to them and you understand what's really important to them, what do they care about, and then you can think about how can you help them, and you offer that up, and then you follow through. And so that what that does is it establishes trust, and you can think of that as currency. This is you're building up a wealth of trust in your network within your company. And so then that person, when they have an issue, they're going to come and reach out to you and talk to you because they know that they start to see, especially over time, that they can count on you to help them out. And that flows in both directions. And so that's really how you get seen, and you actually are someone who can get things done around the organization and not just a, a pleasant person in a room.
You hit on so many points that I can just talk for an hour just from the points that you just made. That's how important they are. With networking, there's a mantra. Okay. There's know you trust you, they'll do business with you. Now, know you, if you're just dealing with people in the company, they see your face, they know you. Like you, that narrows down just a little bit because not everybody's going to like you. But that trust factor is so crucial that it is a currency. And whenever I go into a situation like that, I remember a word called FORM: family, occupation, recreation, and a message. Because I can talk to the person on any level, their family, their husband, wife, sister, brother, son, daughter, whatever. Their occupation, that's your work. You can talk to them. Recreation, what does he like to do? Does he like to go boating? Does he ski? Whatever. And talk about that. So if you talk about anything but business and just keep it that conversation, you'll be remembered. And in the hallway or on the phone or in a meeting, they'll always know you and wave to say hello, how you doing, and strike up a little conversation with you. So I can't go through all the points that you made, but that trust factor is so important. It is like a currency. Very good.
Yeah. One thing I just add to that is
Sure.
you got to really care. I can imagine people who are listening to this as, okay, I have asked the family and the recreation is like, honestly, this is what makes your work really meaningful are these relationships. And if I would encourage anyone, if you're feeling some dissatisfaction at work, this is a rich source of satisfaction in your work and adds a lot of meaning to what you do.
Authenticity. That's the number one thing. You have to be authentic. You can't just be superficial and say, okay, I have to know you, I have to like your trust, family, your wife. What does she do? You can't be phony. You can't be a phony.
Mhm.
It's got to be authentic. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Interruptions are everywhere. How can leaders stay connected to people while protecting their time and energy?
That's live that day to day. I wish I found a surefire solution for that. I do think as a leader, that's part of your job is that your team isn't going to get things done unless you're out there actively watching to reduce the interruptions on them. And probably public enemy number one is the meeting. And as a leader, you have a lot of control over that. And in something maybe it's my workplace or the workplaces I've ever been, but and I think Zoom and pandemic have something to do with this, but just meetings, they will fill your entire day if you don't guard against it. And there's a variety of tactics. I've never seen anything work permanently, but I would just say it's just like weeds. You have to always be tending to your calendar and making sure there's critical time for you, but even more importantly, critical time for your team to get their work done because it's really an unfair expectation to that everyone's going to work every night, every weekend to make up for it. So,
That's keeping
yeah.
that work-life balance. That's
Mhm.
very important. I know on my calendar, I have a set 2 hours for the day that I don't allow any meetings. I have to get my work done. I don't always get it done in 2 hours, but it's true that you have to just take a little bit of time of your day so you can rethink and get your work done, as well as go to all meetings. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things in corporate world, everything's a meeting. We have to meet for this, meet for that, no time for work. Okay, so how do you create networking moments in environments where everyone is distracted, busy, or siloed?
That's right. And remote, and a lot of us, I think very large percentage of us are still remote. And so there's always a meeting or a chat message or an email to be processing. And I think it's just a commitment and maybe setting goals for the week. I think I was talking about earlier about who is in your network within your company. And you can bake that in by scheduling recurring meetings. So it's just on the calendar. Every month I talk to this person. Some people who are more critical, you might talk to them weekly. Just grab that 15 minutes. If you don't have anything to talk to, you can cancel it and approach them, talk to them about it. Say, look, I'd love to make sure that we stay in contact. This relationship is super valuable to me. It's fun to talk to you. Let's just have something on the calendar. What's a good time for you? And then I think widening your circle outside of your company. And so this is where I've fallen down in the past. This is something that I'm still developing in myself, which is maintaining my professional network outside of work. And it's the same thing, but maybe the time frames are just longer. Every 6 months or every year, make sure you talk to someone. I know people do the birthday thing. I'm curious your opinion about that. It's funny, I don't do that myself, but I always love it when someone sends me a text on the birthday. I was like, oh, that's nice. I see what you're doing and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it and something it's nice. I come from corporate and the mortgage field and everything else. And I did when we're still using folders and not electronic folders. But inside of every folder, I had all of the information. If it was the husband or the wife's information, the birthdays, the children's birthdays. And I used to put it all on my calendar. And I used to send them a card when it was a birthday. And that was a lot of cards, but that was the time of writing cards and not sending a text message. But now it's so much easier because it's true, just write a little text message or an email. And so I agree that I think that goes a long way because the person receiving it has that little feeling that it feels good. Oh, he
Mhm.
remembered. Oh, that's very good. I actually, I have an old boss like from years ago that I text every year. That's the only time I talk to him is on his birthday. And I text him happy birthday and everything else. He's always appreciative of it. So it's something you ought to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. So when you're aiming for a promotion, how important is it to build a strategic internal network beyond your direct manager?
It's a Good question. It really depends on your situation because one of the considerations at the outset is when you're trying to get your promotion within your company is, will my manager support this, be neutral, or try to undermine my desire to do that? And so the example I gave earlier, I had a strong relationship with my supervisor. He was supportive. I had a feeling he would be a neutral, at worst, neutral to that. And it turns out he was very supportive. And so I have been in situations and in my career and advised people in situations where their boss is not going to be supportive of it or might be working against them. And so then that's, I think, where your question was headed at, where you really do need to develop relationships with your boss's peers at best, even better with their boss or people at a higher level. And there are probably some good ways to do that. Some things that I've tried, it's people in the hallways and just start asking questions. And then that can, once you establish a little bit of rapport and contact, then that creates some space for you to say, "Oh, can I put some time on your calendar? I have a few questions." And then it's similar to the what I was talking about before in your framework, know you, trust you, you want to get to that trust you part. And then at a certain point, if you do have a good enough relationship with a peer where you might need to maneuver around your supervisor, then you have people who believe in you and who can pass the message along or up. And I think sometimes it's not that you want to leapfrog your boss or something, but it's really about what are the opportunities? Are there opportunities that you see for me that are maybe in a different department? Where could you see me fitting in or doing something here? So those are some
That's
ideas.
it's very good. And I don't know how many people right now are going to in that position, going to a going to an office where people are milling around and
Mhm.
speaking with one another. But if they have that image of passing the person in the hall saying, I've got a question for you, make it an important question, of course. But if you do that once or twice, then you can move to, can I set some time on your calendar? Because I have a few questions. And if you've approached him or her a few times in the hallway, then it's, oh, that's Greg. Oh, that's right. Yeah, sure, of course. I'll make a few half an hour my calendar. And then that's the way that you start, and that's the way that you get all those other people involved. That's a very good way. And I hope anybody who's listening is paying attention because that's a very good way. If your supervisor isn't always on your side, they may work against you, which a lot may feel. This is a way to go around that, okay, without you feeling like you're backstabbing. So that's very good. What are some underrated networking moves professionals can make inside their own companies? We basically just covered that, but do you have another or
Inside the companies, just attend the social events if when they're there. And sometimes if you're remote, sometimes they have remote social events, meetings about any kind of roundtable discussion, any type of activity that's happening. I've been fortunate in recent years to have, while the company is has a lot, it's really a hybrid kind of company. A lot of the company is distributed, but we do happen to have a local office, and so it's making use of that space to have the old-fashioned milling around and those discussions. And and I do have to come back to my area of interest for introverts, and that can be more challenging. And there are ways of doing that in concentrated ways that maintain your energy and are authentic to you. And it's really the other element is a motivation. If you're understand that this is really important. And if you want to accomplish something, you want a promotion, you want to, or just be more effective in your job, this is a really critical piece. Those personal relationships help you so much.
absolutely? Absolutely. Okay. What do top performers do differently in terms of relationship building, and visibility that sets them up for fast track success.
Yeah, I think it's just the element of, I guess a big part of it that I didn't realize early in my career. I intuitively found my way into developing and cultivating relationships. And I intuitively, I naturally underplay my successes, my accomplishments, because, and I think this is common to a lot of introverts, we don't love self-promotion. And I've since come around to ways of understanding that there are ways of providing visibility into the good work you're doing, and especially as a leader, to the work that your team is doing. And so it's really, you really need to devote a lot of time to, or just, I guess it's not a lot of time, but just make sure that it happens. You need to make sure that you're communicating about your success, and not just to your boss, but announcing them in different places, because it's really, people should know about the good work that you and your teams and your things are doing. One, so that gives them more confidence in you. But two, it gives them the opportunity to ask questions and improve the way the organization functions.
That's good. That's good. I'm listening to you and I'm almost imagining your ladder, the ladder that you've climbed and everything else and all your successes. What mistake have you made that you can remember, probably a big mistake, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. One doozy of a mistake from earlier in my career was, at a certain time in my career, I was leading customer projects, and in the software industry, an enterprise will work with a large company, a much larger company. I work in smaller companies that works with larger companies, and so I get like all of the experience of working in large corporate without the day-to-day, some of those minuses. But we work with very large companies, and we had a software rollout where the schedule kept falling behind, because they're like, boy, it's really, we had to import the data into our software, and then we had to stand up, at the time was like a forum software. And boy, it's really taking a long time to import this. It's never taken this long to import all this data before. And engineers are working really hard. We were really straining to get all this data into our system. It never occurred to me, and finally we did it. All the data was in, and this was after a delay of 2, 3 weeks. It never occurred to me that, just in the same way that it was so hard to get data into our system, when you turn the site live, it might struggle to to actually work like we expected it to. So we launched. It was a spectacular fail. The software seized up. We had to turn it off. It was like this, and this was, I was leading the charge on this, and I froze up. And so I learned a lot. Some people can stepped in and helped me, and we got through the whole thing. But I learned so many things in from that one experience. And some are just experience of early warning signs and preparation and testing and that sort of thing, because we had some maturity issues in the company. But two is really about that, when a situation comes up, it's not about you and your personal worth. It's not about the job you did, that there's always an opportunity to lead, even if there's been a colossal failure and there's egg on your face and everything. It's really about, what do you do next? What's the next thing in the moment? And it's not about this gigantic judgment on the mistakes that you made. So there's always an opportunity to move forward and lead.
Absolutely. And I've learned, listen, I've been a small business owner. I've worked through corporate. And one thing I've learned, you learn so much more from your failures than you do of your successes. And because the lessons you learn from your failures really stick with you, because you say, I'm never going to do that again. All right. But I always felt that you learn more from your failures than your successes. Okay. So let's bring this podcast full circle. What's one mindset shift that helps people stop networking passively and start building influence intentionally?
There's a couple ways I could go on this. I'll pick one. I'll pick a lane. One, I think it's like the it's what's in it for you. It's really about forming that connection, that next relationship. And I just value it so much more now than I did earlier in the career. I guess it felt to me, networking felt like something that I should do, I had to do. And for whatever reason, I just had a bad attitude about it. And when you think about the benefit you can have of making that connection with a person. If I go out and have coffee with someone like that, it's just such a pleasure and such a joy just to sit down with another human being, especially today in the land of Zoom, and enjoy coffee and just and have a conversation. And if you can spend a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, it's it just adds a dimension to your life of human connection that is a shared moment, and then that sticks with people. So you always have that in your memory and in the memory of that other person. And so that's such a gratifying thing compared to I've got to expand my influence and as part of this like a death march to keep improving your career. I don't know if I've captured that well in words, but there's a lot of good in it for you is the mindset shift.
Greg, you've done such a great job with these questions. It's really unbelievable. I'm so glad that you achieved the success that you've achieved. If somebody wanted to get hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah, thank you. I have my podcast and it's on Substack. It's called powerandplay.substack.com, just all written together. You can also reach me at Powerful Introvert, all one word there, powerfulintrovert.substack.com. You can see all of my podcast episodes and my content there.
Very good. Very good. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You were a great guest, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Michael.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.